the date October 21st, 2021, the top 75 list was released, and it has been very glaring to me that a player is missing. So let's talk about it. Before I get to assessing why this is a snub, let me just say that this list is pretty fucking flawed. Because the creators who made the list didn't account for evolution of the game, like literally at all. When we're talking about as an individual with talent, some players just do not transcend time. I understand their stats may, but once I look at the player, then I look at the stats, I can tell that there's a difference in skill there. And then to consider the overall talent pool, some players are just good for their time, and that's okay. So let's take a look. As you can see from the film, the elite back then do not play like the elite now. I mean, they don't even fundamentally move the same. So what you're going to see from the film is very little face-up shot curation, or really just none at all. So just regular jump shots, one dribble pull-ups, hook shots. I mean, even their contact layups are just only with the dominant hand. These guys did not dribble with their left hand at all. So if you consider this the elite back then, just imagine what the rest of the league looks like. And then before the ABA merger and shit, I mean, compared to the league today, that production would deflate because of the talent pool. And that's just because evolution of the game, and that is okay. And for that reason, the top 75 list is flawed, because you have to filter out talent to see if it still stacks up to the talent that you have currently now. It's the top 75 talents. So that means from the beginning to now. I mean, bro, just look at this list. Sam Jones, Bob Patet, Bob Cousy, Dave Bean, Paul Horizon, Dennis Rodman. Like, there's talents today that are better than these guys. But that's neither here or there. I'm going to be discussing why Paul George is better than Reggie Miller, Damian Lillard, Scottie Pippen, and Jason Kidd. The way I rank and assess talent is by their complete skill set. Essentially, what can you do on the basketball court and at what level? So that means your level of scoring ability, defensive effectiveness, and versatility, and playmaking talent. The way we're going to be assessing this is by using headshot graphs, stats, metrics, and etc. Paul George for his total career has a higher 3-point percentage than Dame, with their numbers being 38 for Paul George and 37 for Damian Lillard. But Paul George has recorded a total of 4 seasons shooting 40% or higher, while Dame has only recorded 1. Next, we're going to talk about the mid-range game. If you know a single thing about Paul George, that he's an absolutely mid-range maestro. I mean, he's elite at reading the defense when the on-ball defender goes over the screen to compensate for his three-point ability, and he's going to kill you in that drop coverage. These two aren't even in the same breath when it comes to the mid-range. These two have very similar finishing talent, with them both being high flyers, can finish on either side and finish with either hand while being creative around the rim. Dame's finishing number squeaks by PG, although be it Dame shooting far more at the rim than PG, but we're still going to give Dame the edge. So as a 3-level scoring threat, PG clears. Now we're going to discuss their playmaking ability. So let's take a look at some film of how Paul George uses his size, IQ, and on-ball ability to manipulate the defense. As you can see here, Paul George is coming off the break. This is a high screen and roll. Zubac slips a screen, which makes the defender go over, and the off-ball defender hedges just a bit hard, leaving an easy lob for PG. Now this pass right here is just amazing. As you see, this is a high pick and roll. Jordan Kennard takes the screen, defenders blitz, and just gives a quick pass between the legs, splitting the defenders. I want you guys to take a look at the on-ball gravity Paul George commands with the ball in his hands. that is 5 defenders, all eyes on him. We got a high screen in a row here. The defender decides to go over the screen. Paul George keeps up with the run pressure, giving defensive breakdowns, kicks out to a shooter. Easy 3. Between these two players, they are very, very relative playmaking talents, with Dame having higher creation opportunity due to him being a point guard and being the first option on his team. Although be it Paul George creating higher opportunities for his teammates. So factor that in how you personally want. It can really either go any way, but the numbers say what they say, so we're going to go with Dame. Next, we're simply going to just move to defense, and it's not even a conversation. Like, Paul George is 6'9", Dame is 6'1". Even if Dame tried, he couldn't even guard all the positions Paul George can. And then on top of that, Paul George is 4 times more defensive while Dame has none. So, clear. So as a scorer, PG clears. As a defender, he clears, and he's at least relative playmaker. So, next up, we're going to be talking about Scottie Pippen. Now, these two are some of the most versatile and complete wings in NBA history, with them being able to score, defend, rebound, like literally the whole ordeal, playmaking, everything. So let's look at Pippen's best season when he was 3rd in Defensive Player of the Year voting and MVP voting. So let's look at the numbers. Now let's look at Paul George's numbers when he was 3rd in those same categories. It's really bizarre to me that he was able to put up these numbers with the production that he had, considering that Westbrook was his point guard and he was leading in usage and was a top 10 MVP candidate that year. Amazing. And then on top of that, PG's literal last 2 seasons are better than Scottie Pippen's considered best season. Now, while I do think Pippen is certainly more adept defensively than Paul George, whether that be the load put him on both sides of the ball or his ability, Paul George as the offensive talent is just in another stratosphere compared to Pippen. And when it comes to their playmaking talent, they're both in the same realm, considering they're both in that point forward category. So Paul George as a talent clears. Now we're going to be talking about Paul George versus Reggie Miller. Now, Reggie Miller was flat out one of the best shooters in his day. I mean, his shooting ability allowed him to score on all 3 levels while being outrageously dangerous from 3. And that'll be whether he's coming off a down screen, a curl screen, a flare, whatever. He's one of the true pioneers for off-ball scoring and shooting the 3 at the volume and level that he did. So let's look at some career stats and accolades to compare these two talents. Something to talk about here is how Reggie Miller wasn't even the best player in his position more than 4 times. And then him being a one-dimensional player is also very concerning when comparing these two talents. So even if we just sat here and really tried to argue, okay, who's the better offensive player? If you watch these two, I'm pretty sure you would say Paul George is a better offensive player, considering his offensive repertoire is highly more extensive than the Reggie Miller. But if you don't believe me, let's look at some film. Now, even though Reggie Miller could curate out of the pick and roll a little bit and could curate his own shot off of his off-ball screens, his offensive arsenal just still wasn't as extensive as a Paul George. Paul George just has a more evolved game than a Reggie Miller, while still being able to do what he does the most and can do even more on the ball. So, PG clears. Next up is Jason Kidd, and bro, this isn't even me picking, but like outside of passing the basketball, what does he really do better than Paul George? I mean, Paul George is undebatably the better scorer, And when it comes to defender, he can guard more positions. So Paul George not being named one of the top 75 talents was just always really ridiculous to me, considering he's one of the more complete players in the history of the game at the level he's able to play at. Can literally do everything on the court. Is one of the most versatile players we ever seen in the game. He's literally one of the most plug and play players of all time. But hey man, I'll see y'all later. Peace.